This is the Lecker Rugby Podatorial with Harry Jones, where we speak our minds.
Yo, welcome to the Not So Lecker Rugby Pod. This is my rant. This is my unhappy, grumpy meditation. First thing is got to stop making excuses. Second thing is angry coach that's not the method to get out of an actual examination of what's going on. So up in Pretoria, Jake White's going to be using the anger method and the fixation on himself and create these kind of weird framing of issues where it's about whether you know enough or know more about rugby or teach you a rugby lesson. And all that's just ridiculous horseshit. Okay, here's why. Take any coach that's been in the game for a long time. Let's take Eddie Jones or, let's take Eddie Jones. He's probably seen a lot more film than you or I. He's more up to date on whatever lingo, terminology, jargon that they use to talk about it inside a coaching box. But it's different from knowing why you lose. Everyone kind of knows why they win. You know, it's Tolstoy's thing. A happy family's boring. It's the same story. Every unhappy family, that's where the drama is. Just because you've been around rugby a lot, just because you're losing a lot, just because you're underperforming, not winning as much as you should, Jake, it doesn't mean that you know why you're losing. Like, you have a theory, you have a hypothesis. Someone who's not as steeped in rugby than you actually might have a better conclusion, might be able to see it more clearly. But the Bulls developed a style inside the Irk, and it was high octane, high offload, using the ground itself as a competitive edge, the quickness, the speed, the altitude, the dryness of it. And now that Champions Cup is in play with power quotients up and the best of the best, it doesn't really work as well. Bulls are getting plenty of ball. You've got to kick more than 10 times, and you got to kick in the right places. And you also have to know sometimes when it's your own fault as a coach. Like, maybe you've been overcoaching. Maybe Jake's really wants to be a test coach. And I don't think he takes this club rugby seriously enough. And when it got to the finals against Glasgow, then it felt more like test rugby, and then he was into it, then he lost. I still think he's still pouting about that. I don't think he's analyzed correctly why he lost too. He does that performative thing where it's like, oh, they're all my fault. The coach, even in the defeat, the coach is the most important, or he blames players. I don't think he's focused enough on what's making these players move and tick. And it's a real coaching error if your team only kicks 10 times, 9 times in essentially a knockout match. When you have your team that's aligned, that's been together for a while, there's just no way around that's coaching error. That's your tactics on display. How do you change tactics? How do you read people? How do you talk to people? They have to like you. And I'm sure a lot of people like Jake. I don't dislike Jake, but it's not like he's the most likable guy in the world. Okay, let's be honest. So the change room is a dynamic thing. It moves in currents. Sometimes it harbors resentment when a coach says that a player is too fat from going to the buffet. That's not the be all and end all one thing, but it's an indicator that you have important lines that you cross that other people don't. I don't know. There's a lot of coaches who would never do that. And even if you say sorry later, it's kind of like unsaying something you said to a family member. Like, imagine that in your own family, if you called your Mrs. Fat. She went to the buffet. And then think about how many apologies you're going to have to go through for 47 years. Or maybe you don't even get the chance to. So Jake's a little too brittle, a little too thin-skinned, takes the rise too much, too personal. and not sure that he has the working theory of what he can do to change the style of the Bulls in match to match. So totally get the offload mania during Irk. But then what about the change of pace? Where's the shift of gears? That all the teams have. The really good teams have that ability. What about timing and situation? So, play a tight first 40 like the Harlequins did at the Stoop where I was, and then blow the doors at the seconds, Apply the slow poison of Safa Rugby. The Bulls have the shape for it. They have the men for it, the chias for it. They have the work ethic. Um, don't be outkicked. Don't be out muscled. Don't be out thought, because then what's the point of then turning to budgets and whining about the competition structure, like Plumtree talking about how his players are robots. Plumtree is like the twin of Jake, actually. Someone who's been at pretty high levels, doesn't really know why he loses. When he's on a winning team, he doesn't realize a lot of it was because of other people, or because there was a moment, or because a tactic did work for a while. But I feel like Plumtree lost his change room a long time ago. And this has all been cloaked in smoke and mirrors. I think if the order of merit of who should go, Plum's probably been right there for a long time. Jake, unless he can do a super turnaround where the players actually show that they believe in this and they know why they lose and therefore how to win, I don't know how he continues on with this for longer than, I don't know, a few months, 2 months, maybe less. It just looks rotten. Dalbo's the other way around. Dalbo's like, everyone has 17 players and run around, and it's just about hip swiveling. And no one's calling an end to it. It's ridiculous. Kicking when you shouldn't kick, passing when you should kick. So the whole decision matrix, the most important one, carrying, tucking it in, carrying in two hands, feinting, actually throwing the pass where, and then the kick, what kind of kick. None of that's going anywhere close to being realistic. Launching things from nowhere, thinking you can step through the entire Harlequins team. No recognizable cohesion or shape. No methodology to how players are being regimented and platooned. So at Springbok level, with 51 players, there was always a recognizable core. There's only one match in the whole 2024 where you think, yeah, maybe that team was totally experimental. You lace it on top of a skeleton. So if you're going to field a team like the Sharks did at Leicester in Welford Road, then at least have some framework around which you put the players. Don't rest everyone at the same time. If you're Stormers and you have so many people coming to watch you at the Stoop, think about if you don't even recognize anyone except for Salman Murat and maybe 4 or 5 other people, but literally 10 players that even strong Stormer supporters are not necessarily instantly recognizing at sight if they don't have the numbers. That's kind of stupid. You know that the European teams are baying for the blood and calling for it and showing evidence for it. So I think it's not the right time to do that. So, in summary, Jake's a little bit too wild and feral in press conferences. He's angering, people who want to wish him well. He's too harsh. He's not contemplar enough in what he's telling the players. He's not building a picture and a story for them to grow within. Which one of the Bulls players is better now because of their time with the Bulls, and which ones are those are just getting better because of their time with the Bucks? And is there some regression? Who's being told to only put the ball on boot 10 times in a game if you have that much possession? I mean, what is that? What shape is that? Under what scenario is it easier to get from your 30-meter line to their 22 with 23 phases hoping for a line break with no knock on, no pilfer, and no mistake, versus a kick that's 8, 9 times a game and you regain 4 of those and you're there against a fractured defense. And then for the Stormers, let's just have any shape. Let's have some structure. Let's have some meaning, some fundamentals. I've been calling for Johan van Kraan and Heineke Meyer. I mean, I know it's a bit of a piss take, but the point is structure, please. Plays that are set, rehearsed. The best teams in the world are doing highly rehearsed moves. Know where you are, what you're doing. I saw a guy like Herbst for the Harlequins. Yeah, the Oman. He doesn't look like anything, but he's just high work rate. Not so much because he's high work rate, but because he knows where he's supposed to be. It really helps you to work hard when you know where you're supposed to clean a ruck, and you know where you're supposed to join a mole, and you know where you're supposed to defend one. Your ruck work is so much about 1 meter left or right and makes slow guys quick. So for me, promote Dobson into poet laureate, the bard of Western Province Rugby, and get anyone in there at all who kicks chairs, is grumpy, maybe Jake. Bulls, I think, a really honest, no excuses succession plan, if that's what's needed, and no putting up with anger as a defense tool. No, it doesn't mean that just because someone's watching rugby their whole life and inside it and getting money from it that they know better than a smart analyst or a sentient human being about why you're losing. You don't always know. And the more angry you are, the more it's obvious that you don't know why you're losing. And then finally, I think the Sharks have a team, and that team should be performing much better. It's extremely disappointing to watch it year after year. And the one constant to me is there hasn't been a proper headline coach commensurate with the talent. Who's the Ibn Etzebeth of coaching that's out there? So you're not going to get that guy, but get close. Right now, I don't know what the counterpart player Plumtree is, but it ain't good. So this is where we are. At this point in time, I don't know if there's any way to get around the fact that it's just playing for the league, because the champions thing looks a bridge too far. Could it turn around? Yeah, I'm sure it could, but it'll do so despite these factors, not because of them. Something's going to change, and excuses and excuse making and sophistry, where you argue an indirect point, an obtuse point, about who's watched more rugby, and esoteric arguments about budgets and who's a robot and who's robotic. It's not going to help you. You're in a competition, and everyone's got their own battles, their own injury list. So yeah, it's one of those days where you look at it and say, I'm tired. I'm tired of all the reasoning that doesn't make sense. So it's time for someone to step up, man up, take the bull by the horns, ride out the storm, and start biting like a shark. Cheers. Oh, thanks, MV, for letting me rant.
This is the Lekker Rugby Podatorial with Harry Jones, where we speak our minds.